Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Do you ever wonder if your life has any purpose? Does it really matter in the larger scheme of things? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to contemplate life purpose is Tim Freke. Tim is a philosopher and an author of 35 books translated into more than 15 languages, including The Jesus Mysteries, which was a Sunday Times bestseller and Daily Telegraph Book of the Year, and his latest book, Soul Story. He was included in the 100 most spiritually influential living people list in Watkins Magazine for 2021 and 2022. For the last 8 years, Tim has been working on a philosophy project called Why Your Life Really Matters. He also leads experiential gatherings internationally. His website, timfreke.com. Tim, thank you so much for coming on the show again.
To get to talk with you one more time.
Yes, may there be lots more in the future as well.
I hope so, yes.
So, Tim, you're listed as a philosopher. How did you become a philosopher?
You don't grow up. You just keep asking those questions. For me, Gwilda, I mean, it's a bit grandiose, being a philosopher, but what that means for me is I wake up every day and this is happening. And I want to know what it is. And I want to know what it is, not for just some abstract reason, because I want to know what I should do with it, how to live, how to experience it more. And my journey through life has shown me that I can change. If my state changes, I can experience life like this, and then the next minute I can experience life like this, and it's so dramatically different that I'm very intrigued by how to make the most of this mystery.
It is a mystery, isn't it? And
yeah, it really is. It really, really is. I mean, it's the most. And what is astonishing, I think, is how easy it is for us, and I see this everywhere, to not notice, as if it isn't, as if it's nothing, as if it's just like, well, we're alive, so what? It's like, we're alive, guys, and we're in a universe which is unbelievably big and unbelievably old, and we're conscious, and we're having this experience between birth and death. What the hell? That's why I'm a philosopher.
Well, that sums it up pretty well. What prompted you to focus on science and consciousness and spirituality within that?
Well, my main focus for most of my life has been spirituality, and that happened because of early, what gets called awakening experiences. Very early for me, when I was 12, and then throughout my life, where that movement that I described from this to this, what is that? And how did I feel like I was experiencing so much more of what this is on another level? So that was happening on the one side. And on the other side, I've been aware in my own lifetime that the dominant way of thinking in the world has become ever more this, what gets sometimes called scientific naturalism, which is fundamentally a rejection of spirituality as supernatural and non-existent, and therefore a kind of rooting of it in biology and physics and all the rest of it. Now, I have so much respect for biology and physics and all the other forms of scientific inquiry, and I've been amazed at the progress we've made in my lifetime, and let alone the 300 years before that, and yet it feels like we're missing something, and we're cutting ourselves off from the most important human experiences, the experiences which actually show us why our lives are really, really significant. And what I'm looking for is a way to, with real intellectual rigor, to genuinely combine, understand spirituality in a new way. That's probably the best way to say it. That I think science has gone through these revolutions in its understanding, which is why it's moved so far, why we're talking on the internet now, all of the miracles of science. Spirituality has evolved, but nowhere near as much. It's still very much stuck in the past. It needs to revolutionize itself. And that makes, I think there's a way in which we can genuinely combine our scientific knowledge and our spiritual wisdom into one narrative that supports where they support each other. And I think the key to it, given the name of your program, is this amazing idea of evolution, which we've had for the last 100 years. And not just the evolution of biology, but this idea that the whole universe has evolved. I think that's the key. And I can go into that in greater detail for you, but I think that's the key, which allows us to reintegrate spirituality into naturalism and create one narrative.
Isn't science and spirituality actually on a collision course? Ultimately, if we follow through with the evolutionary evolution of both,
How do you mean, collision course?
like they're going to merge.
Well, I do hope so, but the question is how, and I don't think we've found the way to genuinely do that. I think what's happening is that there's lots of people trying, and that's hurrah. But genuinely, on the spiritual side, it tends to be to try and encompass science within spirituality, and I don't think that's going to work. I did think that would work, but for the last 10 years, maybe a bit more now, it's felt like that's not going to work. So what I'm playing with, the basic hypothesis that I'm exploring is what happens if we take a really radical approach to evolution, and if we say, look, what is existence? Well, every moment is a new moment forming from the past. So maybe that's what existence is. Maybe existence is this process of forming, and that's what evolution is. And that process of forming has taken us from the very simplest of things we can possibly imagine at the beginning of the universe, and has, taken hydrogen and created us, having a conversation about the universe. That's an incredible journey, but that's what's happened, it looks like. What if everything, and I mean everything, that has any form whatsoever is part of this one process of forming? But what if that process of forming didn't end with biology, which is the main naturalist view? You get biology, then you get this funny thing, the psyche, which is a byproduct of biology, and that's it. What it looks like to me is that that's not true. That actually the psyche is just the Greek word for soul, isn't it? So the soul, the psyche, is the cutting edge of this 14 billion year evolutionary process. And it's not just a byproduct of anything, because what marks out this process of evolution is that every level is more than, and cannot be reduced to the lower levels. So the psyche is more than, and it's its own domain. And just like biology forms an ecosystem, so psyches form an ecosystem. And that ecosystem of psyche is what spirituality has been studying for the whole of human history.
Do you think that the more dogmatic approach to religion is part of what's sticking in the wheel, if you will?
Yes, it definitely is, and I think that's finished. It'll take a while, but it's finished. But it can never really go whilst science exiles the spiritual experience, because that's too important. You can't take that up. That people are not going to let that go. So for there to be a genuine new understanding, we need a scientific view which can actually address the reality of these higher, more emergent levels. So what I'm wanting to suggest is actually a lot of the old spiritual ideas are true. It's just that we've misunderstood them. And not surprisingly, they're very old ideas. Our understanding has dramatically changed. And a lot of these ideas are literally hundreds, if not thousands of years old. So I want to go, look, the psyche, the soul, has evolved to be able to survive the death of the body. It's not dropped from some supernatural thing. So what I'm suggesting is not the division between the natural world and the supernatural, but no supernatural, but the natural continues into what's traditionally called the supernatural, so that the soul has evolved to survive the death of the body. The psyche is a domain of narrative. It's where we hold things together in stories. So there's a narrative dimension to life, and it's having an effect on our lives, which is why synchronicities happen, which is why you could the dreamlike nature of life can happen. All of those things which spirituality points to are real emergent phenomena which come from the more advanced levels of the evolutionary process. And then probably the most controversial idea, which is very important to me, is I think the thing that we call God traditionally, that experience that there's something greater than us, which is wise and loving, it's not at the beginning. It's not the source. It's the flowering of the universe. The universe is coming from the simplest of things, not the most complex and the most rich, not a big mind, but that it's flowering into this experience of something greater, which is traditionally called God. And if we can turn that around, we remove so many of the traditional theological problems, like the problem of evil and so forth, and you get a completely different relationship with what is traditionally called the divine.
Well, it's about time for us to take a short station break, Tim. But Tim and I will return shortly, so don't you go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Are you conscious? Are you sure? With us this hour discussing spirituality and consciousness is Tim Freke. His latest philosophy project, Why Your Life Really Matters. Tim, we were getting into a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah,
But
we dive deep.
you state that we need a new post-scientific spirituality.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, that's really what I've been trying to explain here, Gwilda. It's that spirituality needs to move into a new phase. I mean, my hope is, when I a little while back I did a TED talk at Berkeley, and I ended it by saying, look, a new understanding is coming, and I don't think that's controversial because it just will. It always has. So sooner or later, our understanding of the universe will transform again. The question is when and what will it be? And what I want it to be, what I'm trying to contribute towards, is that it's a return. It's like science has arisen. It arose from the Hermetic traditions. It arose from alchemy, and then it's rejected the spiritual dimension as a kind of an illusion. However, I think the next phase of our understanding as human beings will be the return of spirituality, but in a radically new way. And that radically new way will be an evolutionary understanding, that it is addressing the most emergent levels of the process of forming that has got us from the Big Bang to here. And that all the elements that in spirituality, like I said, like the immortal soul, that it ceases to be a wacky idea. Well, that's just impossible, isn't it? Because, it becomes something you can actually go, no, that is actually plausible given this understanding. Or, like I said, that the existence of God, or whatever name you give to the big mind, as the Zen people say, that we can understand that in a new way. We don't have to go, well, it's just a matter of faith. You just experience something, you believe it, it's at the beginning, who knows what it is. But you can actually
Tim,
start going,
Tim,
we can understand it.
if we're looking at consciousness and spirituality, doesn't the springboard have to change? It had to be just faith before we had the knowledge base to take it somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, we've moved on, and I think you're absolutely right. But spirituality has, and I mean, I'm not the only voice saying this. Obviously, it needs to radically move on. That's my feeling. So we need to be able to think in brand new ways. So, for instance, going, okay, so what if that big mind, that loving presence, that if you've studied spirituality, you can tune into, and it's very real. I mean, the realest thing I know. What if that is not the reason it feels so real is it's the cutting edge. It's the leading edge of 14 billion years of evolution, and that the universe is coming from the simplest things and flowering into it's flowered into us, where we are conscious and we have psyche. We're experiencing this domain of images and the non-material. We're in the non-material now. These ideas exist in the non-material. What if something is arising on another level again through that which we're experiencing in these spiritual states?
If we're active participants in this, how do we know that how do we know that we're not just operating on faith, that we're actually operating on wisdom?
That's for me is the importance of philosophy, is that we need to reflect and question ourselves at every turning if we want to come close to truth. And by truth, I just mean the interesting word truth. The etymology is trustworthy. That's what like we still have it in English, where you talk about a true friend or a false friend. It's trustworthiness. So you're looking for beliefs that are trustworthy, and to do that you need to reflect, you need to reason, and you need to be able to take your experience deeper as well. And
But isn't truth evolving as well? I mean, how can it be trustworthy if everything's evolving? It's changing, yes?
well, the thing you want true beliefs about is evolving, and that's why you need to keep moving with it. But I mean, look at the human beings. I mean, we've come from basically a mythic understanding, and I think, see, what is a mythic understanding? It seems to me that a mythic understanding is when you take ideas which were appropriate to the human level of evolution and apply them to other levels, previous foundational levels, where they're not appropriate. So to talk about purpose at the beginning, it's like, that's a human concept. There is no purpose at the beginning. That will evolve, that will emerge. Or intentionality or consciousness even. Like, these things are way down the process. And the mythic understanding, which human beings have had most of our evolution, is understandable, because those are ideas that you're playing with in your daily life. And so you think, well, the thunder must be a person hitting something, because that's what you've got to think with. But we've left that behind. The danger is that we fall into the opposite mistake, and we take concepts which are appropriate to physics, like mathematics, and we use them to understand our human experience, where they're just not adequate, because we're just making the same mistake the opposite way around. We need to use the right language at each level and see this one process of evolution which is leading to us.
When I know in the shamanic communities,
Mm.
while the medicine men and the shaman were very much revered, and what they did was, proof was in the pudding, it worked. But generally, the populace thing, oh, you never understand them. Those old ones, they're just strange. They're living in a whole different world. And yet, it's this world, isn't it? And isn't that the severance between spirituality and physicality?
Yeah, I mean, once you get, for me, it's very rooted in experience. And so right now I'm experiencing two levels of reality all the time. I'm a sensory world and a non-sensory world. There's a world of space, and then there's a world of images, and I'm in them both the whole time, body and soul. That's it, right there. And then what's happened with certain people, what's given us the shamanic traditions, is that certain individuals have specialized in the non-material. And if you do that, wherever you put your attention, isn't it? If you put your attention on philosophy, you'll get good at that. If you take it on tennis, you'll get good at that. If you put it on the imaginal, you'll get good at that. And that's what has been done since the earliest of times. What I'm interested in is how we now understand how all that fits together, and how we can give those spiritual insights the importance they deserve, so that they can be taken seriously by mainstream intellectual culture, and not just simply dismissed as things of interest to people who really are either not well educated enough, or gullible, or easily taken in, and go, no, these are about a level of reality. You're missing a level of reality here.
Is the science is starting to recognize it in certain ways. I mean, when they discovered the observer effect, isn't that kind of a cross between science and spirituality?
No, I don't think so. And I think this is a good example. And I'm aware that, you know, this might, I will probably, people will disagree with me here, but see, here's an example. See, the idea of the observer effect as a conscious being watching and doing is not a mainstream idea in physics. It's a mainstream idea in spirituality that claims to be physics. Now, it is an idea in physics, but it's not a mainstream one, and not compared to other interpretations of physics. So what spirituality does is it latches onto these things that it thinks can somehow give it some credibility. And it has the opposite effect, because people who are actually in that world look at that and go, oh, they haven't understood any of this. Because what you're doing again is you're looking for somehow, you're looking to endorse spirituality by seeing the fact that a conscious being is somehow creating. I mean, the things that people say that somehow it shows you're creating reality and all sorts. And I really don't think it does. And so I would like to get away from all of that and see that the beauty of quantum physics is it shows that the universe is relational, but it doesn't show that it needs consciousness, because consciousness is not going to evolve for, you know, billions of years after the physical universe is forming.
Amazing. So how do you define consciousness?
So this has been a big change for me, Gwilda. So, you know, if you'd spoken to me a few years back, I would tell you a much more traditional spiritual idea that it's all in consciousness. I was quoting quantum physics myself. The reason I'm criticizing it is you'll find it in my books. You'll find me, you know, saying all those things in my books, and I think I was wrong. And I'm pleased to say that, because I think I've understood more. But it's also, you know, like, okay, I was wrong. And so now I would say, look, consciousness is paying attention. So for me, the universe is a one, but it's a one in relationship to itself. So the one is forming into all of these different systems, which are all in relationship with each other, and they're all discerning their environment and reacting or responding to it, whether it's a chemical or a plant searching for the light, or you and me having this conversation. And at a certain time in that process, you see in biology the evolution of what we call consciousness. And what it looks to me that consciousness is the ability to focus that processing of information so that you process it in high definition. So what you'll notice is wherever you put your attention, you become conscious of it.
Well, we're going to have to pick up on that on the other side of a commercial break. Tim and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Does your life have a hidden purpose? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing life purpose is Tim Freke. His website, timfreke.com. Tim, does life have a purpose?
It does now. I think, like everything, it's evolved. I mean, the basic thesis I'm exploring is everything that has form has evolved, so that you can trace it back, and you could say, well, the essence has been there right from the start, because this looks like it's the realization of potentiality in ever more emergent ways. So, you know, and where emergent just means it builds on what's been before. So, you know, once you've got atoms, you can have molecules. Once you've got molecules, you can have matter. Once you've got matter, you've got life. Once you've got life, you've got psyche. And then I want to say, and when you've got psyche, you can have God, or that higher power, whatever you call it. So I'd like to say a few more words about that big idea about God, because this is what I'm exploring, is that at some point in this evolutionary process, trillions of individual cells came together to form your body and my body. Extraordinary, isn't it, that happened? That all this time were just individual cells, and now they've all come together, and no cell in this body has any idea really what it's like to be Tim. but they're all being their selves, and they're all working together to be Tim. And that pattern has happened again and again and again through the evolutionary process, like atoms and molecules I just mentioned, for instance. What I'm wondering is, has the same thing happened, and is it happening on the level of psyche or soul? And that just as my body is a communion, if you like, of cells, so that higher thing we experience when it gets called God is a communion of souls, of psyches, and that we're coming in, that as we come into communion, as we recognize the oneness, that the universe is a one, and that we are a expression of the one in relationship to the one, that we come into communion with other souls, and that therefore, what I'm trying to say very quickly here, is that the highest purpose, it seems to me, is that we're actually playing a role in the emergence of God, of this super soul, super system.
Let's take that analogy out just a little bit further.
Mhm.
So if you have cells, like a fertilized egg,
Mhm.
the first thing that happens is it divides, but
Mhm.
into identical cells.
Mhm.
And eventually there becomes a time of differentiation
Yes.
when liver cells divide and heart cells
Yes.
divide. So where are we, if you put that analogy to work, where are we in this evolutionary process? Once we
Mm.
start
Mm.
differentiation, what does that look like? What's the purpose?
I'm so pleased you've said that, Gwilda. That's really, no one's ever come back with that before. And that is perfect, because I really think that's the key, which is, it all the cells now in my body are all doing individual things. If not, I'd be just a big pile of cells. I'd be like a slime mold. I'd be just like a pile of cells. And I wouldn't be this integrated body thing that I am. And I think that's the same with this super system, this greater soul system, which we experience as this great wisdom and benign love. What we bring to it is that we're so individual. So this is quite a big change, especially from Eastern spirituality, where the idea has been, and I think mistakenly, that somehow your individuality is the problem. You have to get rid of it to get back to where you came from, because you came from the one. Whereas what I'm suggesting is that actually, no, we're ready to change that around now and go, no, it's the opposite. Your individuality, the evolution of your unique psyche, is what you bring to the communion of souls. So just like the body it works by differentiation. So the whole process, if you look at, for 40 billion years ago, the universe was mainly hydrogen. One hydrogen atom is pretty much the same as another. Now we've differentiated into human beings, and one psyche is really not the same as another. And that's what's, you're different to me, and that's what's so wonderful. And that's what we bring to this greater communion.
And so how do we relate that to individual life purpose?
Well, because I think what that says is, okay, so your the evolution of your individual soul, which is the thing we talked about before, reflecting, becoming wise. You, like every system in the universe, are discerning the nature of reality and responding. How can you discern better? How can you respond better? That's what's evolving. That's it. But you're doing it on a very, very emergent level, on the level of psyche or soul. And in doing that, we can discern, oh, I am this individual Tim, but there's also, the universe is one. It's one thing that's become differentiated into everything, including me, so that I am that oneness as Tim, relating to everything and everyone. And when that happens, there's a shift in your experience of yourself from what I call an individual to what I think of as a unividual, an individual conscious of unity with the universe. And that's been one of the key spiritual experiences which has dominated my life, and which is really happening more and more and more to people. I mean, massively more. This becoming of a unividual experience.
I know that, many people have voiced a concern, if I merge with a unified field, don't I lose me?
Yeah. No. No, that's the thing. I am so, I think that's such a mistake, and there's so many people out there saying that, and I think it's just a very old idea from India. Now, India's been the source of some great ideas, but things have moved on in 2,000 years, 4,000 years. It was a very old idea. It's like, yeah, no, that's what human beings thought then. Now we can see it differently and go, no, the opposite. The more individual, the more evolved you are as an individual, the more you can then experience this unit, this greater unity. And as you come into that communion, you touch something greater, which you become a part of. And it is the most extraordinary experience. And it brings significance to your individual life, because here's what I'm not saying. I'm not going, your life has no significance apart from spirituality. I think your life has biological level has significance. Your family, how lovely, your job, what you bring to the world, your everyday existence is all significant. And on top of which, the soul survives death, the journey will continue, and you get the chance to commune with something greater than yourself. All of that gives this deep significance.
So, as we're talking about this evolutionary process, which of course is one of my favorite topics,
Yeah, well, you chose it as your name for your program, so I'm guessing it was.
must have been right. Um, what goes out must come in. Things happen in cycles.
Do they?
So that's the premise that we operate by right now. How
Okay.
does that fit in with what you're proposing?
I'm not sure it does. I'm not sure that's right. I think that's another of the old ideas. I think if you see things as going in cycles, it's more like a wheel which goes forward. It's like the year goes in a cycle, but this year is not the same as last year, and it includes last year within it. So although things are cyclic in many, many ways, time accumulates. It's another big idea which I haven't had a chance to explore with you, but the forming, that what has formed forever. So that the past hasn't gone anywhere. The past has accumulated, not passed. And the information that forms the past is what is like a hard disk on a computer. It's what's running the present. So, and that's, like you know this in your own experience. What you've learnt in the past governs what you can do now. But that is happening so that the universe is an autodidactic universe, to quote a physics paper that came out last year. It's a self-learning universe, and everything that has been learnt it accumulates. So it's not cyclic. It's actually constantly moving on, even though there's cycles within it, because time doesn't. Even if time came back around, the past would still have happened.
It's more like a spiral, or like you say, a wheel moving
Yeah,
forward.
spiral or a wheel. Yeah, more like that. So the cyclic element is definitely there. We can see that all the time, but that there is still underlying it. There's this forming, more than, more than, and I don't think that seems to be the very nature of existence. That it's always forming as more than.
In a lot of we're about out of time in this segment, but a lot of there's just snippets that keep running through my mind
Mm,
as you're speaking that have come from the ancient text,
mhm,
wheels within wheels. Okay,
mhm.
the sacred spiral, all of these concepts you're speaking about have been alluded to,
Yep.
but we haven't got it. We haven't really made that full connection. It's like we're evolving into something that was already here, but we're seeing it in a much more expansive way,
I think
as
there's
close
always
as it comes.
pioneers who see the horizon before other people do. They often don't get it completely right. It's like you see a bit more. Newton saw everything he saw, and then Einstein came along and went, well, actually, and that's the way it works. And I hope, I would like to contribute a little bit. And then I hope the next generation picks it up and goes, yeah, that was right, but that was rubbish, and moves, and keeps it moving, because our understanding, we evolve.
Well, you've actually kind of done that for yourself. You're your own
Yes,
Einstein.
yes,
You just said, I
yes.
was wrong.
Yeah, I have. I really have.
Yeah.
Quite dramatically, and it's been fantastic to come into my. I'm 65 next week, and to be sitting here going, "Wow, this is all so fresh and new." I wouldn't have anticipated that.
Mm. Well, it is that magic moment. It's time for a station break. Please stay with us. Tim and I will continue to explore consciousness, purpose, and God. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution. What difference can one person make? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Tim Freke. His website, timfreke.com. Tim, what are the misconceptions about life purpose?
Oh God, there's too many. I think really it's about, for me, one of the things I love about this evolutionary understanding is you can see how it emerges onto higher and higher or more emergent levels. So we all have a biological purpose, don't we? You know, that's emerged with life, survive, for the species, reproduce, all of that. And every day we work, we feed ourselves, we clothe ourselves, we find shelter. That's still there. And if that becomes threatened, you have to pay it attention. But then on top of that, you start building maybe a social purpose, maybe to do with your family, maybe to do with what you contribute to the world, your job. That's the next level. And then it's like, and then there's another level. And that's the spiritual purpose. And they don't deny each other, they build on each other. And that spiritual purpose for me is the evolution of, you've talked about, of the individual psyche or soul. And then that it's possible to come into these states of oneness with the universe, which brings you into states of oneness with a super system, as it were, a system made up of other systems. And in this case, that's what I think is what I experienced throughout my life as something which traditionally is called God. Although God is a misleading word, because people think of God as a super being at the beginning of time who creates the universe. I think that is incoherent. I think that God is a kind of crazy God, because the universe we've had 5 complete extinctions to get to where we are. That God doesn't know what it's doing. And it's a mean God, because the world is full of the most awful suffering, which could be easily avoided. And yet this God allows it. So those are the traditional problems. So when atheists talk, I have sympathy for them. I agree with them. Like, that God is a monster and doesn't make any sense and doesn't solve anything, because you've explained the universe, which is a big mystery, by an even bigger mystery. It's like, well, there was a big being at the beginning. Well, that hasn't solved anything. But if you turn that around and you go, no, it's not at the beginning, it's the flowering, it's the latest emergent, then it's not running the show. It's coming from it, just like you are. And just like you look at the world and go, how could it be better? It's looking at the world and going, how could it be better? But it's doing it from this sense of deep communion and connection, which we experience as this love or benevolence. And that's where I think it becomes, that's why I think when people touch it, it feels so real and so important.
How can we, as individuals, if we bring this back down to the pavement,
Yeah.
how can we start to engage our life purpose, if you will? How can we recognize it? How can we engage it?
I think it's like take every opportunity to see what it is you're in. That's how it feels to me. To see how mysterious it is, to ask the deepest questions of it, and to explore the ways that you discern what reality is, which means being willing to question your old ways of discerning it radically. Now, you may question them and come back to them and go, no, I think they're good. But by questioning them in a healthy way, you enable yourself to see it in new ways. And when you do, it opens up. And the other thing, of course, is that it's that when a lot of what I do is experiential, is helping people experience these more emergent states, coming into a feeling of communion and oneness with something higher and with each other. And those exploring those practices, what a fantastic thing to do. And they're so individual. I'm very nervous about going, you should do this, because for some people it's this way. We're so individual. That's the key. So each person has to individually listen to that intuition, that their own guidance within, to be able to go this direction. This person, what's that person saying? Is there something there? And so on.
Are we, everyone's drawn to something.
Yeah.
Okay, that with you it was philosophy. Um, but everybody's kind of drawn to something. Does that drawing kind of put us on the path of our life purpose, but then it continues to evolve as we do?
Yeah, I think the thing that gets called intuition is really important, because I think what's happened is that just as we evolve to become conscious of the world, and I suggested before that was paying attention. That's what consciousness is. The example I love is, you're probably not conscious, and people listening to this are probably not conscious of their left foot right now, but they will be now, because I've said left foot, and oh, there's my left foot. So wherever you put your consciousness, it's like, I'm not conscious of the fact that I'm at the end of my garden, my house is over there, but I am now. I've thought of it. So wherever I put my attention, it comes into high definition. So that's a real power. It's like, what do you do with your attention? Meditation is all about mastering what you do with your attention and putting it on these more emergent levels. You talk about shamanism. It's all about that, I think. The other thing that's happened is that we've not evolved to just be able to process the sensory world in that way, but we've evolved to process ourselves in that way. So I can pay attention to my own processing. That's what thinking is. Thinking is just talking to yourself, or dreaming, or having images, or reflecting, like we've talked about. So that ability to pay attention to your own workings gives rise to a different sort of sensing. I call it psi sensing, because we talk about psi, for the sixth sense, for years, and I think it's for real. I think we're doing it all the time, and that gives us that intuition. Now, the mistake with intuition is to think that somehow it's infallible, or it's always right. And if you've lived a life of following your intuition like I have, you soon discover it's not. It's as fallible as anything else, but it's also really worth listening to, because it's what you've got, and it's a very, very emergent level of discernment. So my feeling is, like with everything, it's like, yeah, take that really seriously, and it will unfold your path. But also be willing to go, oh, didn't get that quite right, did I? And then to readjust it.
Readjusted. So I understand you've been working for the last 8 years, mind you, on a philosophy project. Would you share just a little bit about that for us?
Yeah, I thought I'd finish it in a year or two, and it's 8 years later, and I'm working on it every day here. And my aim is, what I'm going to do, Gwilda, is I've written 35 books. It's too many now, and they're so slow getting a book out, publishers, all of that. We live in the internet age. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to try something I've never done before, and I haven't come across it. I'm going to do something I'm calling a pod book, which is a kind of love child of a podcast and an audio book. So that I'm going to produce it, and I'm going to give it away free on the internet, on YouTube, and all the rest of them, um, as an audio product, which is highly organized like a book. So it's like dang, 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 dang. It'll take you through chapters where you get the information in exactly the right order. But I'm also going to do it spontaneously, so you get a real sense of, it's me. It's Tim, who's lived a life and is doing his best and wants to convey to you something that might be of value to you. And it's a big project. And if people are interested, hopefully it's going to start coming out in the fall, I hope. So if you want to hear when it happens, you need to get on my mailing list, or you need to sign up on my YouTube channel or whatever, so that you hear. But it is by far, I mean, I've written a lot of books, and it's by far the most important thing I've done, but beyond anything, so much more.
Sounds a
And
bit like a life purpose.
it feels like this is, the magnum opus, as they say. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing it, because I think and the reason I've called it Why Your Life Really Matters, is I want to get across that this is not some abstract philosophy. This is about your life and how to make the most of it.
I think so many people are so depressed because life does seem purposeless oftentimes. In closing, what hope can you give people?
That in my experience of this journey, this mysterious journey, it is absolutely possible, and I've seen it with thousands of people that I've worked with across the world, of all cultures, to step into this wider space and to experience these more emergent states, to merge with something greater than yourself. And when that happens, you absolutely know that your life is significant, and the love is just overwhelming. And my hope is to introduce as many people as I get the chance to that experience, because that's how you find the answer to that question.
It's interesting. It seems very paradoxical, doesn't it? To find out who you are as an individual, you have to merge with the whole.
Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that lovely? But it's emerging with the whole, not by going back to something primitive, but by reaching out into something even more emergent than oneself. So we're forming something more than, just like, like our computers are all connected now to create the internet. I mean, that's a little analogy for, look, our souls are beginning to are connected also, and they're forming something greater than each one of them. And that when we experience that, it's beautiful. Actually, it transforms existence.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, I could go on for another hour or so, but unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a delight.
Our guest this hour has been Tim Freke. Tim is a philosopher and author of 35 books, including the award-winning The Jesus Mysteries. To find out more about Tim, his books, and his latest philosophy project, Why Your Life Really Matters, visit his website, timfreke.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy our past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. Please be sure to join me right here next time. This mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to an evolving world.